Hello, this is Michel Leviathan Sorbet and you're watching a new episode on the Wojennik TV YouTube channel. There are some battles, there are some conflicts which are very popular in wargaming and which are the subject of many new games. There are subjects, there are topics which are so often used in wargames that we have new games covering those subjects each and every year. Those are the most popular topics, and one of such topics is, without any doubt, the D-Day landing, so the Battle of Normandy 1944. And today I would like to present you a review of one of those games which are describing this subject, which are covering this part of history. The game was first published in 2012 by Dali Games, but it was re-implemented, it was republished by Wordforge Games in 2019. This game is D-Day Dice. It is a very popular, very well-known game, and today I have the pleasure to show you and to present the new edition of this game. The components which you will be seeing in this video are not the final components because this is a pre-prod version, but it is close to what you will receive. Of course, without all the additional stuff which will be distributed among persons who supported this project on Kickstarter, because this game was relaunched thanks to a successful Kickstarter campaign. The objective of this campaign was to gather £12,000. In the end, the campaign closed with a whopping £248,000. So many people believed in this project, many gamers wanted D-Day Dice to be republished, and so it is. So it will be republished. The game is meant to be played by 1 to 4 players, but thanks to additional elements it is also possible to be played in a group of 5 players. It is a cooperative game, which means that we will be playing in a group of units, of soldier units who found themselves on one of the Normandy beaches trying to survive under enemy fire. Our main objective will be to gather new soldiers, acquire equipment, find vehicles, gather some specialists and advance to the bunker, which is the final obstacle on each of the maps. We have to survive this journey, we have to reach the bunker and survive a final attack. If we all manage to do this, we win. If at least one of the units is wiped out during this journey, we all lose. So that's a cooperative game. The game is can be played on 12 different maps. That's a difference when compared to the first edition. We have more maps than we had in the first edition, and the game will take us from about 20 to 60 minutes. It depends on the map, it depends on the die rolls, it depends on our strategy, on the way that our group plays, because some people like to plan a lot, talk a lot. Some others will just roll dice and will move forward. The game is a cooperative game, which means that not every player will have to know the language of your D-Day Dice version, because this game uses cards, and on those cards we have a lot of text, or we have some text, which will be necessary in order to which understanding will be necessary to play correctly. But because this is a cooperative game, this is not an issue. One of the players, one of the people who plays should know the language in order to translate this game and to explain to the other players what the cards do. So it's absolutely possible to play in a group where only one person knows, for instance, English or German. It depends on the language version that you have. The author of this game is Emmanuel Aquin, and a Polish accent is the artwork director, because the person responsible for the artwork of the second edition is Dominik Kasprzycki. Now I would like to show you how the elements of this game look like, then I would like to explain briefly how the game works, and at the end of the video, as usual, I would like to give you my final opinion about this title. So let's begin our D-Day landing. Here is D-Day Dice in all its glory, prepared to play a solo game. Now, first of all, let's take a look at the elements which are part of this fantastic game. The first element, and the most important one, or one of the most important ones, is of course the map, the playing board. Well, in D-Day Dice you receive several playing maps. In this edition you receive in fact 12 of them. Those playing maps are double-sided, so each time you choose a map you can choose among 6 different tiles. The maps are printed on both sides. Those maps represent the different sectors through which your unit will have to pass. Your unit will have to advance from the starting sector up to the final obstacle, which is most often a bunker defended by some German soldiers. And your objective is to travel through those sectors to reach the bunker and to survive a final attack by the German defenders. If you do, you succeed, you win the game. Of course, in order to win, each unit taking part in this offensive has to reach the bunker and survive a final combat round. If at least one unit succumbs, all players lose. Now, on those maps, as I said earlier, you have several sectors. On each sector, you have a shield indicating the combat factor of such a sector. This will be the number of soldiers killed in your unit, lost in your unit, due to enemy fire during each and every turn that you stay in such a sector. Some sectors have a black background, which means that you cannot stay in such a sector. You have to move directly to a different sector. As you can see, the defense factors can be different. The most difficult sector will be most often the bunker, which has also the most dangerous combat factor. Now, there are many other symbols on those maps. Those symbols can indicate, for instance, minefields, which can increase the damage that you receive when traversing such space sites. We have the machine gun symbol, which will also influence the number of units lost. We have some different symbols. In general, the green ones are the positive ones, the red ones are the bad ones, which will influence your unit. How to track information about your unit? Well, we receive 2 tools which will be used to track those information. The first one is a die. This die is a 6-sided die with 6 different faces. Those faces will be used during gameplay to indicate where your unit is. So if you place your die in a sector, that means that your unit is currently in this sector. Secondly, the number of chevrons on the die indicate the number of turns that you had already stayed in such a sector, because you cannot stay more than 3 turns in a sector unless this is a black shielded sector, in which case you can stay only for 1 turn. The other sides are, for instance, the black shield, which indicates that your unit is currently in a sector where you cannot stay. The red arrow indicates that you have to move during this turn. You cannot stay a turn, 1 more turn in a sector. And finally, the last side of the die with the 2 arrows means that you are moving thanks to a battle cry, which is an additional bonus which you can obtain during your turn. The second thing which will be used, the second tool which will be used to track your unit is the resource card, and each unit will have their own resource card on which we will be tracking the number of soldiers in our unit, the number of courage points, the number of stars which will be used to recruit specialists who can join our unit, and finally the number of tool points which will be used to find items on the battlefield. So those will be the 4 major resources. Those resources will be acquired thanks to die rolls, and each player will receive 6 dice, 2 red, 2 blue and 2 white. Those are 6-sided dice on which we can find medal which will correspond to courage, some soldiers, 2 soldiers or 1 soldier face tools, a skull, which will be a bad result because rolling a skull will mean that you will have to cancel one of your over die, and finally one of your over dice, and finally a star, which, as I said earlier, will be used to recruit specialists. Now those specialists will be recruited among a certain pool of specialists. We have 4 different types of specialists. We have regular specialists, we have reserve specialists, unique specialists, ranking specialists, and there are some subtle differences between them. In general, each player will receive the same deck of regular and reserve specialists which can join your unit. Each such a specialist has a certain price. You have to pay a certain amount of stars in order to obtain such a specialist, which will join your unit and will accompany you during your ascension to the bunker as long as he survives. Some other specialists are generic specialists, or rather specialists which can be acquired by any unit participating in the game. They are not associated only to one player. They will join a unit, but their pool is common, so the first player who obtains a certain amount of stars can recruit them during gameplay. You also, before playing, should prepare the items which will be used during gameplay. In general, there is an item deck from which you can grab the cards useful during a game. During solo play, you will remove cards with a certain symbol from the deck, and we will be using the other ones. Some special items will be also used. It's all in the scenario booklet, where in each scenario we will have information about some special items which can be found in a specific map. You should also prepare your award deck from which you will be drawing awards, and in some cases you will also be needing the vehicle cards, because you can find some vehicles on certain maps and on certain occasions. 2 standard 6-sided dice are also included with, as you can see, a red 6. Those dice will be used, for instance, to verify the number of soldiers lost due to machine gun fire, as you can see here, and for some other effects. You should also grab a turn sequence aid card, on which first of all the sequence is being explained, the table indicating the number of item points 1 is explained, and the RWB bonuses are also very well explained. So this is a very useful player aid. You should definitely use it. Now, the 2 last elements which are enclosed in the box of D-Day Dice are 2 booklets. The first one is the rule book. Now, the rule book is a colored one. It's a very well written rule book which explains us how the sequence of play looks like, how to interpret the different results of the dice. We have some optional rules, some solo rules, information about how to resolve combat, etc. So absolutely no problem after reading this rulebook. The second document is the scenario book, in which you will find the description of the effects of different symbols found on the maps. You will also find the scenarios, and as you can see, in each scenario we have the information about available special items for this battle map, some special additional information governing play on this map, and the explanation of some symbols found on the map. At the end of this booklet you will also find a random sector table, random sector tables, because on certain maps you will randomly choose certain results, and that's a nice addition to this second edition of D-Day Dice, because on some maps you will run into sectors where you do not know exactly what you will find, and each time a unit enters such a sector for the first time during gameplay, you will have to verify the result in those tables. So each time you you play a map, it can be played a little bit differently because the outcome and the thing found on a specific sector can be different. And those are pretty it, all the elements used during a game of D-Day Dice. Now let's take a look at how a turn looks like and what are the basic mechanisms of this game. The objective of the game is to reach the bunker and to survive a final attack from this bunker. So you have to move through the map, through the sectors from the starting point up to the bunker. The game begins with your die being placed in one of the starting sectors. Those sectors can be different. As you can see, you can easily choose the sector in which you want to start. Each time you will also have the information what will be your starting resources according to the sector where you start. And for instance, here you will start with 4 soldiers. Here you will start with 3 soldiers, but an additional courage point. So let's begin. For instance, here it's a sector in which, as you can see, only 1 unit can be at one time, and the second information is that it's a no stay sector. You have to leave it after 1 turn. So the first thing will be to add those soldiers to your unit. Then you roll the dice. You have 6 dice, as I said earlier, and after your first die roll, you have to lock 2 of those dice. Now, what means locking those dice? You have to choose 2 of those 6 dice and put them apart. Those will be the 2 dice which will not be re-rolled. You cannot re-roll those dice because normally you get 2 more re-rolls. Now we can also set aside additional dice, but those dice will not be locked. So for instance, if I choose to lock my 2 dice and leave also 1 additional die, I can roll the remaining dice 1 more time, and before my final roll, because I have 3 rolls, I can grab the die which I left apart during my first roll in order to re-roll it and to obtain my final tally, rolling the dice 1 more time. Now, when I'm done rolling, I check the results. The first thing that I verify is if I obtained a straight. What is a straight? Well, a straight is a set of the 6 different results. It is possible to obtain such a straight. If you do, you will receive a bonus, and this bonus will be 1 award from the award deck. Moreover, you can choose this award, so you can look through the deck and choose the one that you want to receive. The second thing will be applying the results. You also should verify if you have any skulls in your final tally. If you do, you have to cancel over dice. If you had a straight, this skull is negated. You do not have to cancel any die. But if you do not have a straight, you have to cancel 1 die. This die alongside the skull will give you absolutely nothing. What you also try to verify and what you try to obtain are the RWB bonuses. Because if you receive 3 results of the same type but of different colors, you will receive a special RWB bonus. And for instance, for the 3 soldiers, you will receive 5 soldiers to your unit and 3 soldiers to another unit of your choice. Now, what deserves to be mentioned is that each nation has a different set of RWB bonuses. So, for instance, the French have such a bonus. But if we grab the Commonwealth card, we can see that the bonus will be different. You will add 3 soldiers to your unit and 5 soldiers to another unit. So it's the opposite to the French bonus. So it is really worthy to obtain RWB bonuses because not only you get those bonuses, you also grab the resources indicated by those die and by those dice. And when you add the resources thanks to the RRWB bonuses, you also add the resources which are indicated on the dice. So for instance, here we would receive 3 soldiers, we would receive 1 courage point, we would receive nothing else because the final soldier had been cancelled by the skull. After applying those results, we adjust the unit marker. If this is a standard sector, we would increase the die to 2. But because this is a black sector, we will change our die to the black symbol, which indicates that we have to move. But before moving, we pass on to the 4th phase, which is the Rally a Specialist, Find an Item, Draw an Award phase. At this point, we can spend our courage, we can spend our stars, we can spend our items, which are being acquired in a very specific way. So for instance, for 3 tools you receive 6 item points, for 4 tools in your final tally you receive 12 item points, and you can spend those items to grab equipment which is being found on the game board. You can also recruit specialists from the specialist pool, which will immediately join your team, which will immediately grant you some bonuses. After recruiting, after finding an item, you may move. Now, if you have a black shield on your die, or if you have the move symbol, this means that your unit has to move. You can move forward or you can move sideways, but you cannot move twice into the same sector. So here, if we want to move forward, we have to spend the number of courage indicated by the line being crossed, and then we can also change the face of our die to 1 chevron because we will be able to stay in the new sector up to 3 full turns. Of course, passing through this line means that we have to lose this point of courage because it required us to spend 1 point in order to advance. The final phase of each turn is the combat phase, during which we lose a certain amount of soldiers. First of all, we lose an amount of soldiers equal to the defense factor of the sector in which our unit is currently placed, and secondly, we verify if there is any special damage. Here we have a machine gun fire symbol, which means that we have to roll a die, and this die indicates the number of additional soldiers that we have to lose. If we drop to 0, our unit is wiped out and we lose. We replay a new turn in the same manner. If we have several units, because we play a 2, 3 or 4 players game, each player will roll their own dice. Each player will also apply their own results. But what is very important and useful is that when 2 units occupy the same sector, they can trade resources. So for instance, if one unit has a lot of soldiers but not many tools, and the second one has a lot of tools but not many soldiers, they can just switch their resources. Of course, it is also possible to just give resources to another unit and not to obtain any from this unit. Because this is a cooperation game, a cooperative game, so you will try to give resources to other units who need those resources and to grab resources which are being sufficient to other players. Of course, if those units occupy different sectors, such trade is not possible unless you have some special equipment which will enable you to trade. We play such turns up until the moment that we reach the bunker. We verify, we play a final combat phase, and if each unit manages to survive, the game is won and the players win. If any unit fails, if any unit loses its last soldier or last specialist, we lose the game. All players lose the game. And those are pretty much all the basic mechanisms of D-Day dice. Now I would like to tell you a few words about my opinion about this game, what I think are its strong points and what I think are its a little bit weaker points. D-Day Dice is a game that I discovered some time ago because I played the first edition back in 2013. The game was published in 2012 and I acquired it some time later, and I played it several times. It is still part of my collection, but after heavily playing it in 2013, I put it back on my shelf, and even today, if I were to locate it, I would have to carefully think where to search for it. So it is a game that I haven't played for several years. Thanks to WordForge Games, thanks to the successful Kickstarter campaign, and thanks to the plans of publishing this game in Polish, I had the opportunity to rediscover it thanks to this second edition. And I must say that once again I had a blast playing this game. I love war games and I love dice games. If we mix both type of games together, we receive something that I extremely like. So D-Day Dice is for me a winner. It's a game that I really love. Now, I believe that this is a game which is a game which is part of a special category of war games. It's a war game filler. There are some war games which have a very short time of play. Not many of them, but D-Day Dice is part of this family. You can easily play a game, even explaining the rules to a novice, and play a game in 60 minutes or so. So that's a really short time. And if we look through all the war games on the market, there are not that many games which can be played in 60 minutes or less. So this is a major strong point of this game, because you can easily grab it and play 1, 2 or even 3 games in a row during one evening. But this is not the only aspect which I really like in D-Day Dice. What I really like is the fact that the rules are very straightforward. They are very easy to explain, they are very easy to interpret, to understand, but at the same time the decisions made during the game sometimes are really agonizing. You have simple mechanisms and a lot of decisions during gameplay, and this is a combination which, in my opinion, is one of the things that are part of a really good game. Those games are quite easy to understand, quite easy to grasp, but very hard to play because of all the decisions that you have to take. And D-Day Dice is also a part of this category. So the rules are really easy, and furthermore they are very easy also to explain, so it is easy to teach a new player this game. Additionally, you have a fantastic player aid card on which you really have everything that you need to play. The sequence of play is extremely well explained. You have the explanation concerning the items, you have the explanation of RWB bonuses, about the trait, you have everything that you need on this one piece of player aid. So frankly speaking, even after some months, some years of pause without playing this game, you can just lay it down on the table, grab this player aid and restart playing. That's a huge bonus, that's a huge strong point of this game. It's so easy to replay it, it's so easy to teach it, it is just great. What I really like is also that all the elements that you receive in this edition, in this game, are so functional. I have already said a few words about the player aid card, but the same concerns the game maps. You have 12 different game maps in this edition, so that's 4 more than in the first edition from 2012. And on those game maps you do not have any text, you have just symbols. And those symbols are very easy to understand. At first glance they might seem complicated, especially the ones located on the later maps. But in reality, using the scenario book, using the player aid card allows you to very quickly understand how those different sectors work like. So it is just a question of reading and understanding the sectors, and this is key to victory, because before advancing, before gathering your team, you have to carefully plan ahead and decide what path to take during gameplay. Of course, you can change your plan in accordance to what you gather during several turns, but you have to always keep in mind that advancing through a certain path requires you to have some resources, and that is also a great aspect of D-Day Dice, because you will have to plan ahead. You will have to always carefully think about what resources to grab. You have several factors which will influence the way that you will roll your dice. Some dice games just require you to roll dice, gather resources, and that's pretty it. Here you will have 5 different types of resources, 4 types of resources, and the skull result, and each of them will work differently. You will obtain different bonuses. It's all a question of finding the correct moment to acquire a certain number of resources, because all of them are very important and crucial to move forward. What I really like are the RWB bonuses and the straight bonuses, because those 2 aspects require you to sometimes reconsider the way that you would like to roll your dice. Additionally, the fact that you have to lock 2 dice after your first roll requires you to make some tough decisions. Will I gather more soldiers, or will I try to obtain the RWB bonus? It's all up to you. And furthermore, this is also a moment where you should carefully look at the board, where you should carefully look at your resources. You always have to keep in mind that advancing to the bunker will require you to have more and more soldiers who will succumb under enemy fire. So you need soldiers, but at the same time you need stars to acquire new crucial specialists. At the same time you need courage to advance, and you need items to acquire some equipment. So sometimes the decisions will be really tough. What I really like is that all the maps are very different. You start with an easy map. Exercise Tiger is a very easy map. But then when you land on Omaha Beach, when you land on Gold Beach, etc., you will be surprised by the amount of soldiers killed during each turn. You will be surprised by some different mechanisms. Finally, you will be surprised by random sectors, which can be devastating if you happen to run into a trap which will eradicate the half of your team. So each game will be different, and taking each path on certain maps will also make the game very different, and that's a great thing. One additional aspect of this game are the emotions which are part of this game, because I said that we have many war games which cover the Normandy battle, but few of them are so focused on individual soldiers. Here, each soldier counts. Each specialist is an individual soldier, and having 22 soldiers in your team means that you have 22 soldiers, not 200, not 2000. You do not take a step loss. You have 4 or 5 soldiers eliminated. You see how the number of those troops diminish, then they mount, you receive a bulldozer, you gather some amphetamines, you have the feeling that you're in the middle of this battle. And few war games, and especially few D-Day war games, are so focused on individual specialists, individual soldiers. You really have the feeling as seeing Saving Private Ryan battle scene, opening scene on Omaha Beach. You are just taking part of such a battle, and that's fantastic. So the emotions in this game are really well felt. What I really like also is the fact that this is a game which has a huge potential to be further developed, further enhanced. You have additional expansions which are already available on the market, and in my opinion, it's not the end. You have so many different options. You just can add additional cards, such as legendary cards, which are also part of the upgraded pack, which was presented on Kickstarter. You have some additional specialists, you have some additional items. You can invent a lot of new things because it's such a well-tuned system that you can easily add new things. It's a modular system to which you can just add things if you want and still have a very playable, enjoyable game. Having said that, I believe that there are also some weaker points of this system. The first one, which is the strongest point and at the same time the weakest points, are the dice. Because I already said that you always have to carefully consider and think what dice to keep, what dice to reroll. But even so, sometimes you will just be unlucky. You will get skull results, you will not roll soldiers 3 times in a row, you will not acquire the one and only star that you needed to acquire the crucial specialist. It happens. Sometimes you will get very lucky. You will receive 6 soldiers, RWB bonuses 3 times in a row. It also happens, but it's all part of the game. Now, there is one major aspect which, in my opinion, really makes this minus a thing which can be forgotten. It's the time of play. But because even if you happen to run into a very unlucky streak of die rolls, you can just reset the game and restart it. If you happen to lose very quickly, well, it's not a big problem, because resetting the game will take you 20 to 30 seconds and you can restart playing, still ending your gaming session in 45 minutes. So this minus is of course a thing that you should consider, especially if you feel that you are extremely unlucky with dice games, but at the same time you should always keep in mind the time of play, which is a major factor which you should consider. The second thing is that, in my opinion, it is still a solitaire game. It's a game which will shine in the solo mode. While playing with your friends, if in a group of 4 or even 5 persons, because an expansion allows it, you will have the feeling of playing a solitaire game with additional players alongside you at the game board. You can trade resources, yes, it's true. Each unit has to reach the bunker in order to win, in order the group to win, but it's still a solo play. You will roll your own dice, you will decide what dice to keep, you will manage your private resources. Of course, there are some additional elements such as carrier pigeons or officers which allow you to trade resources with other teams, but even with those elements you will still have this solo experience feeling during gameplay. Not a bad thing, because I'm a big fan of solo games too, but for some people who are seeking for more cooperation in cooperative games, this might also be a problem. Having said that, I believe that D-Day Dice is an exceptional, a very, very good design, a design which I am very happy to see once more republished, a game of very high quality, extremely pleasant, extremely fast to play, very easy to learn and very easy to teach. You should definitely try it. This was a review of D-Day Dice, the second edition, published by WordForge Games. Thank you a lot for watching this video, have a fantastic day and see you next time.